Everything looked perfect until you looked closer. A Filipina nurse boarded a plane to Dubai with dreams of saving her family. 3 years later, pieces of her body were found scattered across the desert, and the man responsible was preparing to inherit $400 million. March 2, 2021. A date that would mark the beginning of the end for a Cebu City family. It began with hope, the kind that makes you pack everything you own into 2 battered suitcases and kiss your dying father goodbye. The last text message Ligaya Mendoza sent to her mother read, "I finally have everything I ever wanted. I'll bring my son home soon. I promise." She never made it home. But what killed Ligaya wasn't the desert heat or a random act of violence. It was something far more calculated. A love that was never real, a baby used as leverage, and a family whose wealth could make people disappear without a trace. This is the story of Ligaya Mendoza, a 33-year-old nurse who crossed the world for opportunity and found herself trapped in a nightmare designed by a man who saw her as disposable. A man whose family's billions could erase her existence like she never lived at all. Welcome to Crime Vault, where we expose the darkest truths that money tries to bury. To our loyal subscribers, thank you for seeking justice with us. Stay with us as we uncover a case that reveals how power, manipulation, and systematic cruelty can destroy an innocent life. Before we dive into what happened in that luxury yacht on Dubai's Marina Walk, you need to understand who Ligaya Mendoza really was. Because this isn't just a story about a victim. This is about a young woman who lived her entire life fighting against impossible odds, until one terrible night when those odds crushed her forever. Ligaya Elena Mendoza entered this world on March 15, 1990, at Vicente Sotto Memorial Medical Center in Cebu City, Philippines. She was the second of 4 children born to Roberto and Elena Mendoza. Roberto was 58 now, a former jeepney driver whose spine had curved from years of sitting in traffic, breathing diesel fumes, fighting for every fare. Elena was 55, a seamstress who'd spent 3 decades hunched over a sewing machine in their tiny living room, stitching other people's clothes while her own children wore hand-me-downs. Their home in Barangay Luz was 30 square meters of concrete and corrugated iron. 6 people sharing 2 bedrooms, a bathroom with water that only ran 4 hours a day, and a kitchen where Elena performed daily miracles, turning 100 pesos into meals that somehow fed everyone. Ligaya had an older brother, Marco, 35 now, working construction in Qatar, sending money home when he could. 2 younger sisters, Jasmine, 28, who'd managed to finish college thanks to Ligaya's sacrifices, and Rina, 25, still studying nursing just like her older sister had done. The Mendoza family had these rituals that never changed, no matter how hard life got. Every Sunday, 6 a.m. Mass at Sacred Heart Parish, followed by breakfast at Manong Rose's Carinderia, where they'd all share one large plate of tapsilog, cured beef, fried rice, and egg. The food was cheap, but those mornings were priceless. Sitting together on plastic chairs, Roberto reading the sports section of the Sunstar, Elena reminding everyone to chew slowly so the food would last, the kids arguing over who got the extra egg. Home videos from 2002 through 2010 show these little moments that only families notice. Ligaya was always the serious one, even as a child. While her siblings played in the street, she'd be inside helping her mother cut patterns, or teaching Jasmine multiplication tables, or counting the coins in her school allowance to see if she could save enough for a new notebook instead of using her old one until the pages fell out. In school, Ligaya was a force of nature. Cebu City National High School, class of 2008. She graduated valedictorian with a 94.3 grade average. The awards ceremony footage from May 2008 shows something beautiful. When Ligaya's name was called, the first person on her feet cheering wasn't her parents. It was Jasmine, screaming so loud the microphone picked it up, because even at 13 years old, she understood what her older sister had sacrificed to get to that stage. But here's where Ligaya's personality really showed. She was methodical, careful, the type who'd read her textbooks twice before the semester even started. She color-coded her notes, kept a planner where every hour was accounted for, and had a 5-year plan written in the back of her journal. Jasmine was the social one, the campus connector who knew everyone's gossip and could make friends in a funeral. But Ligaya? She had 3 close friends, all of them as serious about their futures as she was. Ligaya earned a full scholarship to Southwestern University in 2008. And this is where her life's purpose became crystal clear. She enrolled in the Bachelor of Science in Nursing program because she'd done the math. Teachers made 12,000 pesos a month. Accountants made 15,000. But nurses who went abroad? They could make 200,000 pesos a month. That kind of money could change everything. That kind of money could save her entire family. 4 years of university weren't easy. While other students were going to beach parties and dating and discovering who they were, Ligaya was in the library until closing time, in the skills lab practicing 4 insertions on rubber arms, memorizing drug dosages and disease processes and anatomy until she could recite it all in her sleep. She graduated cum laude in 2012 with a Bachelor of Science in Nursing. Passed the Philippine Nursing Board exam on her first attempt with a score of 84%. By June 2012, at 22 years old, Ligaya Mendoza was a licensed registered nurse ready to change her family's life. Except reality had other plans. Her first job was at Perpetual Succor Hospital in Cebu City, working the medical ward. 12-hour shifts, rotating days and nights, caring for patients with dengue fever, tuberculosis, diabetes complications, heart failure. The work was exhausting and often heartbreaking, but Ligaya was good at it. She was the nurse patients requested by name, the one who remembered that Mr. Santos liked his bed raised to exactly 45 degrees, that Mrs. Reyes needed her medications crushed and mixed with applesauce, that young Miguel was afraid of needles and needed his mother to hold his hand during blood draws. Her salary was 15,000 pesos a month. That's approximately $300. After sending money home for her father's maintenance medications for his high blood pressure and diabetes, after contributing to Jasmine's college tuition, after paying for her own rent in a boarding house she shared with 2 other nurses, Ligaya had maybe 2,000 pesos left each month for food and transportation. She slept on a single mattress on the floor because buying a bed frame seemed impossibly extravagant. For 8 years, this was her life. Wake up at 4:30 a.m. if she had the morning shift, 6 p.m. if she had nights. Shower in water that was always cold because the boarding house's water heater had been broken for 3 years. Eat whatever was cheapest at the hospital cafeteria. Work until her feet ached and her back screamed. Send money home. Sleep. Repeat. She dated occasionally, but nothing serious ever developed. The men she met either couldn't understand why she sent most of her salary to her family, or they understood too well and saw her as someone who'd take care of them the same way. Ligaya kept a journal during these years, and the entries paint a picture of quiet desperation. I'm 26 and I have nothing, not even my own bed. Is this all my life will ever be? Saw a patient today who reminded me of Papa. Same shuffle in his walk, same tremor in his hands. I'm terrified. Jasmine graduated today. At least something I've sacrificed for actually worked out. Then came December 2020. The phone call that changed everything. Roberto Mendoza collapsed while driving his jeepney on a Tuesday afternoon. Other drivers helped him to the emergency room at Vicente Sotto Memorial. The diagnosis came back like a death sentence, stage 4 chronic kidney disease. His kidneys were operating at less than 15% capacity. He needed immediate dialysis to survive. Each dialysis session cost 3,500 pesos. He needed 3 sessions per week. That's 42,000 pesos a month. Ligaya made 15,000. The math didn't work. No matter how many times she calculated it, wrote it out, tried to find a solution, the math simply didn't work. Her father was going to die unless she did something drastic. January 2021, Ligaya walked into the offices of Golden Crescent Medical Staffing Agency in Cebu City. The recruiter was a woman named Annie, mid-40s, wearing too much makeup and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She'd seen thousands of desperate nurses walk through that door. Ligaya was just another one. Dubai hospitals are desperate for experienced nurses, Annie explained, sliding a glossy brochure across her desk. 22,000 dirhams monthly. That's about $6,000. Can you imagine? Ligaya could imagine. She'd been imagining it for weeks. $6,000 a month meant she could send 4,000 home. Her father's dialysis would be covered. Jasmine and Rina could finish their education. Maybe, just maybe, her family could stop drowning. The contract promised 3 years of employment at Al Noor Private Medical Center in Dubai. Private accommodation, health insurance, annual flights home, visa sponsorship. All she had to do was sign. Ligaya Elena Mendoza signed her name on January 28, 2021, and with that signature, she sealed her fate. The next month was a blur of preparations. Medical examinations, police clearances, authentication of documents at the Department of Foreign Affairs. Her family threw a despedida party in their tiny living room, neighbors crowding in, bringing pancit and lumpia, everyone pretending this was a celebration instead of a goodbye that might last years. March 1st, 2021, 11:30 p.m. Ninoy Aquino International Airport, Manila, Terminal 1 departure area. Picture this. The Mendoza family, all 6 of them, crowded around Ligea's luggage trolley. 2 battered suitcases that had belonged to her grandmother, held together with extra straps because the zippers no longer worked. Elena couldn't stop crying, rosary beads wrapped around her trembling hands, whispering prayers to every saint she could remember. Roberto sat in a borrowed wheelchair, too weak from missed dialysis sessions to stand for long, but insisting on seeing his daughter off. He held Ligea's hand with a grip that was already weakening, his skin papery and dry, his eyes sunken but fierce with love and pride and terror. Marco kept checking his watch, as if tracking every remaining minute before his sister disappeared into a world he couldn't protect her from. Jasmine held it together until the final boarding call, then broke down completely, clinging to Ligea and sobbing into her shoulder. "Be careful there," she whispered. "Rich men in Dubai, they're different from us. Don't trust them just because they smile." Rina, the baby of the family, stood silent and pale, too young to fully understand but old enough to sense that something fundamental was changing. Ligea's last words to her father, "Papa, when I come back, you'll be healthy again. I promise." A promise she meant with every fiber of her being. Promise she would die trying to keep. Philippine Airlines Flight 317 pushed back from the gate at 1:15 a.m. Ligea settled into her economy seat, 32C, middle seat, sandwiched between a sleeping businessman and a chatty elderly woman who wanted to know her entire life story. She pulled out the journal she'd kept since nursing school and wrote, "I'm terrified and excited. What if I fail? What if I can't handle the pressure? But Papa's face when I told him I could pay for his treatment. I'll remember that every time I feel like giving up." 9 hours later, the plane descended through clouds that looked like cotton candy in the dawn light. Dubai International Airport appeared below, a sprawling complex of glass and steel that seemed to go on forever. March 2nd, 2021, 4:35 a.m. local time. Ligea walked through Terminal 3 immigration control with her Philippine passport, her work visa, her heart pounding so hard she thought the immigration officer might hear it. The city hit her like a physical force. The gleaming terminal with its ceiling that seemed 3 stories high, women in black abayas gliding past like elegant shadows, the overwhelming smell of expensive perfume and artificial air conditioning so cold she shivered despite coming from a plane. Signs in Arabic she couldn't read, English she could barely process through her exhaustion. And outside, even at 5 a.m., the heat was oppressive, a wall of humidity that made breathing feel like work. The taxi ride to her accommodation took 40 minutes through a city that looked like a science fiction movie. Buildings that pierced the sky, construction cranes everywhere, highways so wide they had 8 lanes in each direction. Rolls-Royces and Bentleys and Lamborghinis passed their beaten taxi like it was standing still. Ligea pressed her face to the window, watching a world that seemed to exist in a different universe from the Cebu city she'd left behind. The apartment Golden Crescent had arranged was in a building called Marina Heights, shared accommodation with 3 other Filipina nurses. A bedroom with 2 bunk beds, a shared bathroom, a kitchen the size of a closet. It wasn't much, but it was clean and air-conditioned and had Wi-Fi. Her roommates, Mary, Grace, and Faye, welcomed her with instant coffee and pan de sal they'd somehow found in Dubai, and warnings delivered in rapid Tagalog. Don't trust the recruiters. They promise one thing and deliver another. Save every dirham. The cost of living here will shock you. Stay away from the Emirati men, especially the rich ones. They see Filipinas as maids or mistresses, nothing in between. Ligea listened and nodded and filed it all away, but she was too exhausted to really hear it. She'd been traveling for 20 hours. All she wanted was sleep. Her first 2 weeks at Al Noor Private Medical Center were overwhelming. The hospital was nothing like perpetual succor. Everything was new, the equipment, the medications, the protocols. The patients were Emirati families who expected 5-star service, expat executives with private insurance, and wealthy medical tourists from across the Middle East. Ligea worked the medical ward, 12-hour shifts rotating between days and nights, learning a completely new system while battling homesickness so intense it felt like physical pain. She video called her family every other day, watching her father grow weaker despite the dialysis her money was now funding, watching her mother's hair turn grayer, watching her sisters pretend everything was fine, while their eyes said they missed her desperately. Then came April 15, 2021, the day Ligea's entire trajectory changed. She was called into the nursing director's office at 2 p.m., mid-shift, with no explanation. Mrs. Sharma, the director, was Indian, efficient, and not unkind. "We have a special opportunity for you," she said, sliding a new contract across her desk. "A private duty assignment with a prominent family. The pay is 35,000 dirhams monthly instead of 22,000. Ligea's brain did the math automatically. 35,000 dirhams was $9,500, more than double what she'd been promised. "What's the position?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Private nurse for an elderly woman, Sheikha Fatima Al-Aziz. She's 82, diabetic, heart disease, needs 24-hour monitoring. You'd live at the family estate, private room, all meals provided. The family specifically requested someone with your qualifications." It sounded too good to be true, which meant it probably was. But $9,500 a month meant her father could get better treatment. Meant Jasmine and Rina could finish school without working part-time jobs. Meant maybe, finally, her family could breathe. Ligea signed the new contract without reading the fine print. That was her first mistake. The Al-Aziz family estate was in an area called Palm Crescent, which wasn't actually on any map but was definitely in the category of, if you have to ask where it is, you can't afford to live there. The compound was 15,000 square meters of beachfront property. The main house had 8 bedrooms, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Persian Gulf, an indoor pool, a garage housing 12 luxury cars that probably cost more than her entire neighborhood back home. Ligea's quarters were in the staff wing, a small but comfortable room with a private bathroom, air conditioning, and a view of the service entrance. Compared to sharing a bunk bed in Marina Heights, it felt like a palace. Sheikha Fatima Al-Aziz was everything the file said: 82 years old, diabetic, recovering from a minor heart attack. But she was also kind in a way Ligea hadn't expected from someone so wealthy. She spoke to Ligea in accented English mixed with Arabic, teaching her phrases like shukran, for thank you, and kaif halik, for how are you. She told stories about old Dubai, before the oil money, when the city was just a trading post and families lived in barasti houses made from palm fronds. She treated Ligea like a person, not a servant, and that small dignity meant everything. Ligea had been working at the estate for exactly 1 day when she met Jamil Khalil Al-Aziz. April 16, 2021, 2:30 p.m. She was in Sheikha Fatima's private medical suite, checking the elderly woman's blood pressure, 130/85, slightly elevated but acceptable, when the door opened without a knock. He walked in like he owned the place, which technically he would someday. Tall, maybe 6'1", athletic in the way that comes from personal trainers and expensive gym memberships. Designer stubble, expensive cologne, eyes that seemed kind until you looked closer and realized they were calculating. "Grandmother," he said in English, bending to kiss Sheikha Fatima's cheek. Then he turned to Ligea. "You must be the new nurse. I'm Jamil." He looked directly at her when he spoke, which was unusual. Most of the family members barely acknowledged staff. He asked where she was from, how long she'd been in Dubai, if she was being treated well. Small talk that seemed genuine. Sheikha Fatima smiled at the exchange, pleased that her grandson was being welcoming. That first meeting lasted maybe 5 minutes, but it established a pattern that would prove fatal. Over the next few weeks, Jamil made a habit of visiting his grandmother during Ligea's shifts. He'd bring coffee for both of them, Turkish coffee for Sheikha Fatima, cappuccino for Ligea because he'd noticed she liked it. He'd ask about Ligea's day, her family back home, how she was adjusting to Dubai. The conversations were friendly, appropriate, the kind of polite interest a wealthy man might show to his grandmother's caregiver. But slowly, carefully, he was laying groundwork. He positioned himself as different from the rest of his family, more understanding, more worldly. "I studied at Oxford," he mentioned casually one evening. "I know what it's like to feel isolated, even in a house full of people. Different culture, different expectations, always trying to figure out where you fit." By late April, the conversations had shifted from the general to the personal. Ligea found herself telling Jamil things she hadn't told anyone in Dubai, about her father's illness, about the pressure she felt to succeed, about missing her family so much it physically hurt. And Jamil listened with what seemed like genuine empathy, sharing his own stories of feeling like a disappointment to his family, of struggling to find purpose when everyone expected you to coast on family wealth. He made her feel seen in a way she hadn't felt in years. That was the hook. The thing about master manipulators is that they don't seduce you with lies. They seduce you with perfectly calibrated truths, delivered at exactly the right moment to make you feel like you've finally found someone who understands. April 27, 2021, 11:45 p.m. Ligea was on night shift, sitting in the garden during her break, trying not to cry after a video call with her father. Roberto had looked so weak, his voice barely above a whisper, and for the first time, Ligea wondered if all her sacrifice would even matter, if her father would die anyway and she'd be stuck in Dubai, alone, having abandoned her family for nothing. Jamil found her there, mascara running, trying to compose herself before going back inside. "What's wrong?" he asked, sitting beside her on the bench without asking permission, close enough that she could smell his cologne. And she told him everything. The diagnosis, the dialysis that wasn't working well enough, the doctors suggesting a kidney transplant that would cost $50,000 they didn't have. She told him and immediately regretted it, embarrassed by her vulnerability, expecting him to offer empty sympathy and leave. Instead, he said, "Let me help. Family should help family." Notice the word choice, family, like she already belonged, like this wasn't a nurse and her employer's grandson, but something closer, something more meaningful. The next day, 180,000 dirhams appeared in Ligea's Philippine bank account, $50,000, enough for her father's kidney transplant, enough to save his life. When she tried to thank Jamil, tried to figure out how to repay him, he waved it away. "It's nothing to me," he said, "but it's everything to your father. That's what matters." And just like that, Ligea owed him something that couldn't be measured in money. She owed him gratitude, loyalty, maybe even love. The psychological debt of $50,000 is impossible to repay with gratitude alone, and Jamil knew it. May 2021 brought subtle shifts in their dynamic. He started suggesting Ligea use a different phone, more reliable coverage, he said, handing her an iPhone 12 Pro still in its box. The phone came with a new number, a new SIM card, and software she didn't know was tracking her every message, every call, every location. "The other staff gossip," he explained. "They get jealous when one of their own gets special treatment. Better to keep some distance, protect yourself." It made sense the way he said it. Everything he said made sense. By June, Ligea had stopped using her old Philippine number entirely. She told her family the new number was from work, more professional. She didn't mention that Jamil paid the bill, that he could access everything. Why would she? He was helping her family, treating her with respect, making her feel valued in a world where Filipina nurses were usually invisible. The other household staff, the drivers, the maids, the other caregivers, started to notice the special attention. Mary, one of the housekeepers, pulled Ligea aside in early June with a warning whispered in rapid Tagalog. "Be careful with that one. He's done this before. 2 years ago there was a Thai nurse. She left suddenly, middle of the night. Nobody talks about why." But Ligea smiled and thanked her and didn't listen. Mary didn't understand. Jamil wasn't like that. He was genuine. The late-night conversations became routine. Jamil would appear during Ligea's night shifts, when the house was quiet and Sheikha Fatima was sleeping. They'd sit in the private library, surrounded by books nobody read, talking about everything and nothing. He told her about feeling inadequate compared to his cousins. Rashid, who ran the property division with ruthless efficiency. Khalid, who'd tripled the investment portfolio in 5 years. "My uncle looks at me like I'm a disappointment," Jamil said one night, his voice carrying just the right amount of vulnerability. "Like I'm wasting the opportunities my family's wealth provides. But what if I don't want to be defined by money? What if I want to be valued for who I am, not what I have?" Ligea understood that feeling completely. She'd spent her entire life being valued for what she could provide. Money for her family, care for her patients, service for her employers. Nobody had ever asked who Ligea Mendoza was underneath all that utility. June 18, 2021, 1:30 a.m. The first kiss happened in that library, though calling it spontaneous would be generous. Jamil had been building toward it for weeks. The increasingly personal conversations, the casual touches on her arm when he laughed, the way he'd hold eye contact just a moment too long. Ligeia was reading during her break, some romance novel she'd found in the staff quarters, and Jamil appeared like he always did, silent and sudden. "What are you reading?" he asked, sitting beside her on the leather sofa. She showed him the cover, embarrassed, some mass-market paperback with a shirtless man and a woman in a flowing dress. He laughed, but not unkindly. "I prefer the real thing to fiction," he said, and then he kissed her. For 3 seconds, Ligeia's brain screamed that this was wrong, inappropriate, dangerous. Then she kissed him back. She'd been falling for him for 2 months without admitting it. The kiss just made it official. Summer 2021 became a secret romance that felt like a fairy tale. They met in parts of the estate where staff never went, the old servants' quarters that had been converted to storage, the meditation garden at the far edge of the property, occasionally his private penthouse apartment in a building called Marina Heights. That apartment was 4,000 square feet of marble and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Dubai Bay. The first time Jamil brought her there, Ligeia stood at the window for 10 minutes just staring at the view, at the yachts in the marina below, at the city spreading out like a promise of everything she'd never thought she could have. "This could be yours too," Jamil said, coming up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "This life, this city, everything." She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him. The gifts started in July. A Cartier love bracelet, 42,000 dirhams, more than an entire year of her old salary in the Philippines. "It's just a token," Jamil said when she protested. "I want you to have beautiful things." Then a Louis Vuitton handbag, 18,000 dirhams. A 24-karat gold necklace with a diamond pendant, 95,000 dirhams. Each gift came with the same dismissal. It meant nothing to him, mere pocket change. But to Ligeia, each gift was a golden chain, binding her more tightly to him, increasing the psychological debt she couldn't repay. She started wearing the jewelry even during her nursing shifts, touching the bracelet when she felt uncertain, as if the weight of it could anchor her to this impossible dream. August 22, 2021. The first time they slept together. Jamil picked her up on her day off, drove her to the Marina Heights apartment in his Maserati Quattroporte. The sex was good in the way that first times with someone you've been fantasizing about always are, nervous and eager and full of promises whispered in the dark. Afterward, lying in sheets that probably cost more than her monthly salary, Ligeia wrote in her journal, the one she still kept hidden, the one place she was completely honest. "I gave him everything tonight, not just my body, but my trust. He said he loved me. He said we'd find a way to be together. I believe him. Is that foolish?" "Yes, Ligeia, it was foolish. But you couldn't have known that yet." September brought the introduction of control disguised as care. Jamil started questioning her daily activities. "Who were you talking to in the kitchen? Why do you need to go to the Filipino store when I can buy you anything you need? That nurse Maria seems like a bad influence, always gossiping. Maybe keep some distance." Each question came wrapped in concern, in the language of protection rather than possession. He was looking out for her, keeping their relationship safe from prying eyes and jealous colleagues. That's what Ligeia told herself. The red flags were there. His jealousy when she mentioned male doctors at the hospital, his insistence on knowing her schedule down to the minute, his gradual isolation of her from other Filipino workers. But love makes you rationalize. His jealousy meant he loved her deeply. His control meant he was protecting their relationship. His secrecy meant he was planning the perfect time to reveal them to his family. October 12, 2021. After sex in the Marina Heights apartment, Jamil produced a small plastic bag of white powder from his nightstand. "Cocaine. Want to try?" he asked casually, like he was offering coffee. Ligeia's nursing training kicked in immediately. She knew the risks, the addiction potential, the legal consequences in the UAE. "I don't think that's a good idea," she said. But Jamil was already cutting lines on the glass coffee table with a credit card. "It's nothing serious, just something to help you relax. You work so hard, you deserve to feel good. Do you trust me?" That question, "Do you trust me?" would become his most effective weapon. Because once you've said yes to trusting someone, saying no to their requests feels like betrayal. She tried it once, then twice, then it became part of their routine. Now she needed him for the high too. November 28, 2021, 6:15 a.m. Ligeia stood in the staff bathroom staring at 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test. Her period was 17 days late. She'd bought the test 3 days ago and finally worked up the courage to use it. Pregnant. The word seemed impossible and inevitable at the same time. They'd been careful most of the time, but not always. There had been nights when careful seemed less important than close, when protection felt like a barrier to the intimacy they were building. Her first emotion wasn't joy or terror. It was hope. This baby would legitimize their relationship. This baby would force Jamil to marry her, to make everything real and official. This baby was proof that their love meant something. She waited 2 days before telling him, practicing the words, imagining his reaction. Would he be shocked, scared, happy? November 30th, 2021, 8:30 p.m., the Marina Heights apartment. I'm pregnant, she said, the words tumbling out before she lost her nerve. I know this is unexpected, but maybe it's a sign. Maybe this is how we start our family. For exactly 3.7 seconds, she counted, watching his face. Jamil went completely blank. His expression was unreadable, frozen, like his brain was processing information that didn't compute. Then he smiled, and the smile didn't quite reach his eyes. This is wonderful, he said, pulling her into an embrace. This changes everything. It did change everything. Just not the way Ligaya thought. What Ligaya didn't know, couldn't know, was that in August 2021, Sheikh Farman Al-Aziz had revised the family trust. The new terms were specific. Only married male heirs with legitimate sons could access the principal of their inheritance. Jamil stood to inherit $400 million if he produced a legitimate male heir by his 30th birthday, June 8, 2022. For $100 million. That kind of money could fund generations. That kind of money was worth protecting at any cost. But legitimate had a very specific meaning in Emirati law and culture. It meant married to an appropriate woman. Not a Filipina nurse. Never a Filipina nurse. December 15, 2021. Jamil moved Ligaya out of the family estate and into a luxury apartment in Seaside Towers, Dubai Bay. 28th floor, 2 bedrooms, fully furnished with designer everything. Marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows, a view of the waterfront that looked like a postcard. Monthly rent 180,000 dirhams, $50,000 for an apartment. For the baby's safety, Jamil explained. The stress of working with my grandmother, all those stairs, the irregular schedule. You need to rest, focus on staying healthy. It sounded reasonable, sounded like love. It was a cage. A beautiful, expensive cage, but a cage nonetheless. Ligaya had no job now, no independent income, no contact with other household staff who might have warned her or helped her. She was completely dependent on Jamil for everything. Rent, food, utilities, the prenatal care from a private doctor who came to the apartment and asked no questions. December 2021 through May 2022. 6 months of beautiful captivity. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a British expat in her 50s, provided prenatal care in the apartment's 2nd bedroom that Jamil had converted into a makeshift examination room. Weekly checkups, monthly ultrasounds, vitamins and supplements delivered in discreet packages. Everything looks perfect, Dr. Mitchell would say, her smile professional and distant. Baby is healthy, mother is healthy. She didn't ask why an obviously pregnant woman was hiding in an apartment. She didn't ask about the father who was never there during appointments. She was paid too well to ask questions. Jamil's visits became irregular, unpredictable, a tactic designed to keep Ligaya anxious and grateful for whatever attention he gave. Some weeks he'd show up daily, bringing groceries, watching movies with her, his hand on her growing belly, whispering promises about their future. Other weeks she wouldn't see him for 3 or 4 days, her calls going to voicemail, her texts answered with brief, cold responses. Busy with family business. We'll call soon. When he finally appeared, he'd act like nothing was wrong, like the silence hadn't happened. You're being hormonal, he'd say if she complained. Pregnancy is making you paranoid. I'm working on our future. Don't you trust me? That question again. The one that made disagreement feel like betrayal. June 1st, 2022, 3:45 a.m. Ligaya woke to contractions that felt like her abdomen was being squeezed in a vice. She'd been having Braxton Hicks contractions for weeks, false alarms that sent her into panic before subsiding. But these were different, regular, intensifying, unmistakable. She called Jamil, who for once answered on the 2nd ring. It's time, she gasped between contractions. The baby is coming. He arrived 30 minutes later with a driver, helped her into the back of a Mercedes S-Class, and they sped through pre-dawn Dubai to Emirates Wellness Hospital. Ligaya was registered under a false name, Sarah Martinez, to protect privacy. That should have been a red flag, but she was in too much pain to question it. 11 hours of labor. 11 hours of pain that felt like it would split her in half. Jamil stayed for the first 2 hours, holding her hand, murmuring encouragement. Then he got a phone call, stepped into the hallway, came back looking distracted. "I have urgent business," he said, "but I'll be back for the birth. I promise." He wasn't. At 2:37 p.m., when Gabriel Roberto Mendoza, Alaziz entered the world weighing 3.4 kilograms, screaming with healthy lungs, Jamil was nowhere to be found. The nurses placed the baby on Ligaya's chest, this tiny perfect human she created, and she sobbed with joy and exhaustion and a loneliness so profound it felt like drowning. "His name is Gabriel," she told the nurses. "Gabriel Roberto, after my father." They wrote it down, but the birth certificate would tell a different story. Jamil appeared 2 hours later, apologetic and charming, bringing flowers and photographing everything. He held Gabriel with surprising tenderness, this tiny bundle wrapped in blue, and took dozens of photos. "My son," he kept saying. "My beautiful son." What Ligaya didn't know was that every photo was documentation, evidence for lawyers, proof that this was his biological child, regardless of what happened to the mother. The birth certificate listed father, Jamil Khalil Alaziz. Mother, Ligaya Elena Mendoza. The baby was legally Emirati through the father, not Filipino. That detail would matter more than Ligaya could imagine. The first 48 hours after birth were perfect. The private hospital suite, the round-the-clock nursing care, Jamil's constant presence. He seemed genuinely enchanted by fatherhood, changing diapers with comical incompetence, staring at Gabriel's tiny fingers like they were miracles. Ligaya wrote in her journal on June 2nd, her handwriting shaky with exhaustion and joy. "I've never been so happy. When I look at Gabriel and then at Jamil, I know every sacrifice was worth it." He's talking about telling his uncle next week. Finally, we can be a real family. The delusion was complete. She truly believed that motherhood of Jamil's child meant security, legitimacy, love. She had no idea she'd just given him exactly what he needed to destroy her. June 4th, 2022, 10 a.m. Jamil stood at the foot of Ligaya's hospital bed, dressed in traditional Emirati kandura for the first time she'd seen. White robe, white gutra, black agal. He looked like a stranger. "I need to take Gabriel to meet my uncle," he said. "It's important for the family to acknowledge him." Ligaya sat up, wincing at the incision pain from her C-section. "Of course. Should I get dressed? What should I wear to meet your family?" The question hung in the air for a moment too long. "Actually," Jamil said carefully, "it's better if I take him alone first. My uncle is very traditional. Let me prepare him before introducing you. You understand." She didn't understand, but she wanted to seem supportive, not demanding. "Okay," she said, "but bring him back soon. I'm still nursing." Jamil smiled. "Of course, just a few hours." He picked up Gabriel, kissed Ligaya's forehead, and walked out. That was the last time she held her son. June 4th through 7th, 2022. 3 days of escalating panic. Jamil didn't return that evening like he'd promised. Ligaya's calls went straight to voicemail. Her texts, increasingly frantic, got no response. "Where are you? Please bring Gabriel back. I need to feed him. Jamil, please answer me. I'm calling the police if I don't hear from you." The hospital discharged her on June 6th with instructions for postpartum care and a prescription for pain medication. She went back to the Seaside Towers apartment alone, her breasts engorged and leaking, her arms empty, her mind spiraling into terror. What was happening? Where was her baby? Had something gone wrong? Was Gabriel sick? Had there been an accident? June 7th, 2022, 11:30 p.m. The apartment door opened without warning. Jamil walked in carrying Gabriel, who was sleeping peacefully in a designer onesie Ligaya had never seen. She lunged for her baby, tears streaming, but Jamil's expression stopped her cold. He was different. The warmth was gone, replaced by something clinical, businesslike. "We need to talk about Gabriel's future," he said, placing the baby in the bassinet like he was setting down a briefcase. His voice was flat, empty of the affection she'd grown accustomed to. Ligeia felt ice spread through her chest. What do you mean? What's going on? Where have you been? Jamil sat on the sofa, crossed his legs, looked at her like she was a problem to be solved rather than the mother of his child. My uncle wants to legitimize Gabriel. He can be raised as an Al-Aziz, have every advantage money can buy, attend the best schools in the world, inherit his share of the family wealth. Everything a father could want for his son. Ligeia sat across from him, Gabriel sleeping between them, completely unaware of the negotiation happening over his future. That's wonderful, she said carefully. So we'll get married? Make him legitimate that way? The laugh that came out of Jamil was genuine, amused, cruel. Marry you? He said it like she'd suggested he marry the family dog. A nurse? A Filipina servant? You actually believed that fantasy? The words hit her like physical blows. Ligeia felt something inside her crack, the foundation of everything she'd believed for the past year crumbling. You said you loved me, she whispered. You said we'd be a family. Jamil waved his hand dismissively. I said what I needed to say to keep you content. You were convenient, Ligeia. You were vulnerable and desperate, exactly what I needed. You gave me a son, which I appreciate. But marry you? Never. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, delivering the terms like a business proposal. Here's what's going to happen. You'll sign papers stating you were a gestational surrogate, that you relinquish all parental rights to Gabriel. In exchange, you'll receive $2 million, tax-free, transferred to any account you want. He pulled out a folder from his briefcase, documents already prepared, places marked for her signature. Think about it. $2 million. You can pay off your father's medical debts completely. Buy your family a house, a real house, not that shack in Barangay Luz. Put your sisters through medical school if you want. Return to the Philippines wealthy, respected. Start over with a clean slate. Ligeia stared at the papers like they were written in a foreign language. You want me to sell my son? I want you to be practical, Jamil corrected. Gabriel will have every opportunity with the Al-Aziz family. What can you offer him? Poverty? Struggle? A life bouncing between your nursing shifts? He deserves better. You know he does. Ligeia stood, her hands shaking, her voice stronger than she felt. No. One word. Simple. Devastating. Absolutely not. This is my son. Our son. If you want him to be legitimate, we get married. Like you promised. Like you've been promising for months. Jamil's expression shifted from patient explanation to cold calculation. You have 48 hours to sign the papers, he said, standing, gathering his briefcase. If you refuse, I'll have you deported for drug possession. All that cocaine I gave you? Every gram was logged, documented, photographed. I have evidence of you using illegal drugs while pregnant, endangering a child. You'll be convicted, imprisoned, and Gabriel will be raised believing his mother was a drug addict who chose drugs over her son. He'll never know your name. The threat hung in the air, precise and terrible. Ligeia thought of the cocaine, the lines she'd snorted thinking it was intimacy, connection, trust. All of it documented. All of it weaponized. You planned this, she said, the realization hitting her. From the beginning. The relationship, the pregnancy, everything. You planned all of it. Jamil smiled, and for the first time, she saw the sociopath underneath the charm. I needed a son to inherit. You needed money to save your father. We both got what we wanted. Now be smart enough to take the exit I'm offering. He walked to the door, paused with his hand on the handle. 48 hours, Ligeia. Sign the papers or lose everything. The door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded like a cell door locking. June 8, 2022, 9:15 a.m. Ligeia walked into the Philippine consulate building in the Trade Center district with Gabriel strapped to her chest in a baby carrier, her eyes swollen from crying all night, her hands shaking as she filled out the visitor form. The security guard looked at her with the weary sympathy of someone who'd seen this story before. Another Filipina in trouble, another desperate woman seeking help from a government that had limited power in a foreign land. Vice Consul Maria Santos was 45 years old, a career diplomat who'd spent 15 years in various Middle Eastern posts. She'd seen hundreds of cases like Ligeia's, domestic workers abused by employers, construction workers denied wages, women trapped in situations that technically weren't illegal but were morally reprehensible. Ligaya sat across from Vice Consul Santos in a small office decorated with photos of Philippine beaches and a portrait of the president, and told her everything. The recruitment, the job reassignment, meeting Jamil, the relationship, the pregnancy, the promises, the threats. She spoke for 40 minutes straight, words tumbling out in a mix of English and Tagalog, Gabriel sleeping peacefully against her chest, completely unaware that his entire future was being decided. When she finished, Vice Consul Santos sat back in her chair and delivered the truth with the bluntness of someone who'd learned that false hope was crueler than harsh reality. Under UAE law, children born to Emirati fathers are Emirati nationals regardless of the mother's citizenship. The father has primary legal rights, especially if the parents aren't married. She pulled out a folder, showed Ligaya printouts of UAE family law statutes, highlighted sections that might as well have been a death sentence. You were never married. You have no legal standing. The fact that you're the biological mother means almost nothing here compared to the fact that he's an Emirati father from a prominent family. Ligaya felt the room tilt. But I'm his mother. I carried him for 9 months. I gave birth to him. How can I have no rights? Vice Consul Santos's expression was sympathetic but firm. Because this isn't the Philippines. This is the UAE. Different country, different laws, different power structures. And the Al-Aziz family has more money than our entire government's annual budget. The vice consul leaned forward, her voice gentle but urgent. Listen to me carefully. I've handled 11 similar cases in the past 3 years. Filipino workers who got involved with wealthy local men, got pregnant, and found themselves in exactly your position. Every single one who fought ended up with nothing. Some were deported. Some were imprisoned on fabricated charges. Some just disappeared, and we never found out what happened to them. Ligaya's voice was barely a whisper. What should I do? The answer came quick and practiced. Take the money. Sign the papers. Go home. I know it's not the answer you want to hear, but it's the only answer that keeps you alive and free. You can't win this fight. But Ligaya's mother had raised her on stories of sacrifice, of mothers who would walk through fire for their children, of women who chose death over abandoning their babies. How could she look at Gabriel's perfect face and sign papers saying she was just a surrogate, an incubator, nothing more? I can't, she said. I won't. There has to be another way. Vice Consul Santos sighed, the sound of someone who knew what was coming but couldn't stop it. Then find a lawyer. But understand that you're not just fighting Jamil Al-Aziz. You're fighting a system designed to protect men like him. June 9, 2022, 2 p.m. Ligaya sat in the office of James Patterson, a British expat attorney who specialized in family law. His consultation fee was 5,000 dirhams for 1 hour, roughly $1,400 that Ligaya paid with money Jamil had given her months ago for expenses. The irony wasn't lost on her. Patterson was in his 50s, graying at the temples, wearing an expensive suit that suggested he was very good at his job or very good at appearing to be. He listened to Ligaya's story with the professional detachment of someone who'd heard worse, taking notes on a legal pad, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When she finished, he set down his pen and delivered his assessment with the brutal honesty of a doctor explaining a terminal diagnosis. You have approximately a 2% chance of winning custody, and I'm being generous with that number. He pulled out a calculator, started running numbers that made Ligaya's stomach drop. A custody case like this would require a minimum retainer of 50,000 dirhams. The case would take anywhere from 18 months to 3 years. During that time, you'd need a valid visa to remain in Dubai. You'd have to find employment, which would be difficult with a newborn and ongoing legal proceedings. Even if by some miracle you won in the initial court, the Al-Aziz family would appeal. The appeals process could take another 2 to 5 years. Patterson leaned back in his leather chair, fingers steepled, delivering the final blow. And here's the reality that no one wants to say out loud. The UAE judicial system, particularly in family law cases involving prominent Emirati families, is not designed for outcomes like the one you're hoping for. I've practiced law here for 12 years. I've never seen a foreign mother win custody against an Emirati father from a family like the Al-Azizes. Not once. Ligaya felt tears sliding down her face, dropping onto Gabriel's head as he nursed. So what do I do? Patterson's answer was the same as the vice consul. Take the settlement. It's more than most women in your position get offered. It's more than you'll get if you fight and lose, which you will. June 10, 2022. The deadline Jamil had given her. Ligeia spent the morning in her apartment, holding Gabriel, memorizing every detail of his face. The way his tiny fingers curled around her thumb. The small birthmark on his left shoulder blade. The way he made these little snuffling sounds when he was almost asleep but fighting it. She'd written a letter to him, to be opened when he was 18, telling him the truth. Telling him that his mother had loved him more than her own life, that she'd fought for him until fighting meant losing him forever. She sealed it in an envelope, addressed to Gabriel Roberto Mendoza Alaziz, and hid it in her suitcase. At 6 p.m. her phone rang. Jamil's number. She almost didn't answer, but Gabriel was in her arms and the phone was right there, and maybe he'd changed his mind. Maybe he'd realized what he was asking was monstrous. Maybe there was still a trace of the man she thought she loved. Have you made your decision? His voice was cold, businesslike. No pretense of affection anymore. I won't sign, Ligeia said, her voice stronger than she felt. I will never abandon my son. Do whatever you're going to do, but I'm not signing those papers. The silence on the other end lasted exactly 5 seconds. Then Jamil's voice, calm and terrifying. Very well. You've made your choice. Now you'll live with the consequences. June 11, 2022, 6 a.m. Ligeia was jolted awake by pounding on her apartment door. Before she could get out of bed, before she could grab Gabriel from his bassinet, the door burst open. For police officers, all male, all Emirati, filled her small apartment with their authority and their certainty. Ligeia Elena Mendoza? One of them said in accented English. You are under arrest for possession of illegal narcotics with intent to distribute. They found the cocaine in her bedroom drawer, 15 grams in a plastic bag she'd never seen before, planted so obviously it would be laughable if it wasn't destroying her life. That's not mine, she said, her voice rising to a scream as they handcuffed her. Someone put that there. This is a setup. Gabriel was crying now, the sound cutting through her like broken glass. My baby, she screamed as they dragged her toward the door. I'm breastfeeding. He needs me. Please, my baby. One of the officers made a phone call, spoke rapid Arabic, then turned to her. A social worker will collect the child. He will be placed in temporary custody pending investigation. Temporary custody with Jamil, she realized. This was the plan all along. Take Gabriel, arrest her on drug charges, make her so desperate she'd sign anything just to end the nightmare. They took her to Al Rafa police station, processed her like she was nothing, fingerprints and photos and a strip search that violated every shred of dignity she had left. Then they put her in a holding cell with 12 other women. Ethiopian maids accused of theft, Ukrainian waitresses charged with prostitution, Indonesian workers who'd run away from abusive employers. All of them foreign, all of them powerless, all of them learning the same lesson about what happened when you challenged the system. June 11th through 13th, 2022. 72 hours in hell. The cell was designed for 6 people but held 12. One toilet, no privacy, no air conditioning despite temperatures. Outside reaching 45 degrees Celsius. The food was rice and mystery meat served twice a day in portions that left everyone hungry. Ligeia's breasts were engorged, leaking milk through her shirt, a physical reminder of the baby being kept from her. The other women shared their stories in whispered conversations during the night when the guards weren't listening. Stories of promises broken, of men who'd seemed kind until they weren't, of money owed and never paid, of passports confiscated and freedom stolen. An Ethiopian woman named Aster, 32 years old, had been in the cell for 6 weeks waiting for trial. Her employer had accused her of stealing jewelry worth 50,000 dirhams. I never stole anything, she told Ligeia in the darkness. But her necklace went missing and she needed someone to blame. I'll be convicted because my word against hers is no word at all. A Ukrainian woman named Oksana had been arrested for prostitution after her boyfriend, a married Emirati businessman, got nervous about his wife finding out. He set me up, sent me to a hotel room where police were waiting. Now he's home with his family and I'm facing 3 years in prison. These were the women society deemed disposable. These were the consequences of being foreign, female, and poor in a country built on their labor but not their rights. June 13, 2022, 4 p.m. Ligeia was pulled from the cell without explanation, processed out, given back her phone and wallet, and released onto the street. No charges filed, no explanation given. Just a lawyer she'd never met handing her a card and saying, "You have a message from Mr. Al-Aziz." The message was simple and devastating. "Sign the papers within 24 hours and the drug charges disappear forever. Refuse again, and the charges will be filed. 4 years minimum sentence in Dubai Central Prison. By the time you get out, Gabriel will be in school. He won't remember you. He won't want to know you. You'll have suffered for nothing." Ligaya went back to her apartment to find it exactly as she'd left it, except Gabriel's bassinet was gone. His clothes, his diapers, his blankets, all gone. Like he'd never existed. She called Jamil 17 times. Every call went to voicemail. She called the police to report a kidnapping and was told politely that the father had legal custody of the child. There was no kidnapping. Stop wasting police resources. She sat on the floor of the empty nursery she'd prepared with such hope, and for the first time since this nightmare began, Ligaya Mendoza understood that she was going to lose. The question was no longer if she'd lose Gabriel, but how much more she'd lose before it was over. June 15, 2022, 9:47 p.m. Her phone buzzed with a text message from Jamil's number, the first communication in days. The message was short, seemingly conciliatory, carefully crafted to exploit the one thing that could override her survival instincts: hope. "I'm sorry. I've been cruel. I love you. I love our son. Can we talk? Come to Marina Pier, berth 47. I have Gabriel. We'll talk properly. Please." Ligaya stared at the message for a full minute, her rational mind screaming that this was a trap while her desperate heart whispered that maybe he'd realized what he was destroying. Maybe seeing Gabriel without her had made him understand what he was taking away. Maybe there was still a chance. She wrote a note detailing everything: Jamil's manipulation, the threats, the drug charges, the custody battle. She left it under her mattress where someone would find it if she disappeared. She texted her sister Jasmine, "Meeting Jamil about Gabriel. Marina Pier, berth 47. If you don't hear from me by morning, call the consulate." She put on the silver cross necklace her grandmother had given her at her nursing graduation, the one piece of jewelry that predated Jamil's expensive gifts, the one thing that was truly hers. She kissed Gabriel's baby blanket that still smelled like him, and she walked out of Seaside Towers apartment 2804 knowing something was wrong, but unable to stop herself. Because he said he had Gabriel. Because a mother's love makes you walk into traps with your eyes open, hoping against hope that this time will be different. The taxi ride to Marina Walk took 26 minutes through evening traffic. Ligaya paid the driver 45 dirhams, the last cash she had in her wallet, and stood at the entrance to the yacht berths, looking down the long dock toward berth 47. The marina was quiet this time of night, most boat owners either out on the water or home for the evening. Security cameras pointed at the expensive yachts, protecting property worth millions, but the walkways between berths were dark, shadowed, perfect for things that needed to happen unseen. Berth 47 held an 85-foot azimuth yacht named Desert Star, registered to a shell company that would later be traced to Al-Aziz family holdings, but at that moment Ligaya knew none of that. She only knew the yacht was dark, no lights in the cabin, no sound of a baby crying, no Jamil waiting on deck like his message had implied. Her footsteps echoed on the wooden dock, each step taking her closer to something her body recognized as danger even if her mind refused to accept it. She reached the yacht, called out softly, "Jamil? Are you there? Where's Gabriel?" The cabin door opened. 3 men emerged. Not Jamil. Omar al-Balushi, 38 years old, former special operations, now security consultant, which was a polite term for enforcer. Rahman Khalid, 31, driver for the Al-Aziz family for 7 years, muscle when muscle was needed. Khalid Youssef, 29, electronic specialist who made digital evidence disappear. Ligaya's last moment of freedom was the realization that Jamil had never planned to meet her, that Gabriel was never here, that she'd walked into exactly the trap everyone had warned her about. She turned to run, made it maybe 15 feet before Rahman caught her, one hand over her mouth to muffle the scream, the other arm around her waist lifting her off the ground. She bit his hand, tasted blood, heard him curse in Arabic, but they were already dragging her onto the yacht, down into the cabin, into a soundproofed room below deck where her screams wouldn't carry across the water. The interrogation lasted 4 hours and 15 minutes. June 15th, 11:15 p.m. to June 16th, 3:30 a.m. Omar al-Balushi was professional about it, almost clinical. He didn't hurt Ligaya, not physically, not yet. He just asked questions in the same tone you'd use to discuss the weather. Who did you tell about the baby's father? What evidence do you have? Photos, videos, text messages? Did you make copies of anything? What did you tell the consulate? What did you tell your lawyer? Who else knows about your relationship with Jamil? Ligaya answered everything truthfully because she had nothing to hide, no insurance policy, no leverage. She told her family that Gabriel's father was Emirati but hadn't mentioned his last name. The consulate knew her story, but she'd been careful not to name Jamil specifically, following his instructions about protecting their privacy like the fool she was. The lawyer had heard the general situation but no identifying details. The evidence was minimal. Photos on her phone that Jamil had given her and could remotely wipe, text messages that were already being deleted, gifts that proved a relationship but not who it was with. "I have nothing," she finally said, her voice breaking. "I told no one who would believe me over him. I have no proof that could hurt him. I'm nobody. Please, just let me see my son one more time. Please." Omar made a phone call at 3:30 a.m. Ligaya heard his side of the conversation, Arabic too rapid for her limited vocabulary, but the tone was clear, asking for instructions, confirming details, receiving orders. When he hung up, his expression had changed from interrogative to resigned. "You should have taken the money," he said. "Not cruel, just matter of fact. A lot of women in your position do. They go home, they move on, they survive. You chose wrong. The actual murder was efficient rather than sadistic. Suffocation leaves less blood to clean than other methods." Omar held the plastic bag over Ligaya's face, while Rahman held her arms and Khalid held her legs. It took approximately 4 minutes for her to stop struggling. Her last words, gasped out before the bag went on, were, "Please tell Gabriel his mother loved him. Please." No one answered. At approximately 3:42 a.m. on June 16, 2022, Ligaya Elena Mendoza died on a yacht in Dubai Marina, 6,000 miles from home, fighting for breath, her last thoughts of the son she'd never hold again. The disposal was calculated for maximum misdirection. A body discovered whole leads to investigation, identification questions. Body parts found separately in different emirates over weeks, that creates confusion, makes identification harder, breaks the chain of evidence. They'd brought tools specifically for this purpose. Industrial bone saw, surgical knives, heavy plastic sheeting spread across the cabin floor. The dismemberment took approximately 2 hours. Professional, methodical, suggesting this wasn't their first time. Each body part went into heavy-duty black plastic bags, sealed with duct tape, weighted with boat chains. The disposal timeline stretched over 5 days, each part left in a different location to maximize the time before anyone connected them. June 16, 6 a.m., torso disposed in a construction dumpster at Jebel Ali Industrial Zone, a fictional location but based on Dubai's actual industrial areas where dumpsters were picked up irregularly and nobody asked questions about what was inside. June 17, 4:30 a.m., head buried in desert area near Al-Ar, a fictional remote location 40 kilometers outside the city proper where Bedouin shepherds rarely ventured and the sand would shift with every windstorm. June 18, 5:15 a.m., left arm deposited in Sharjah landfill, across emirate lines to complicate jurisdiction. June 19, 3:45 a.m., right arm in a dumpster behind Albershah Restaurant District where the smell of rotting food would mask decomposition. June 20, 7 a.m., legs placed in separate locations, one in Iman Industrial Area, one at a construction site in Ras Al Khaimah. The yacht was professionally cleaned by a service that specialized in discretion, the kind of company that didn't ask why you needed biological matter removed from your boat's cabin. Marina security cameras had experienced a technical malfunction from 10:45 p.m. to 4 a.m., exactly the window when Ligaya arrived and when the yacht left the berth. Khalid Youssef's specialty. Ligaya's phone was remotely wiped then physically destroyed, smashed and thrown into the Persian Gulf. The text message from Jamil's number was deleted from her phone before it was destroyed. And Jamil himself had an ironclad alibi, 200 witnesses at the Al-Nur Foundation Charity Gala from 8 p.m. until 2:30 a.m., including security footage of him giving a speech about charitable giving at 9:47 p.m., exactly when that text message was sent from his phone. The phone he'd report stolen the next day. June 20, 2022, 7:45 a.m. Ahmed Hassan was a Pakistani construction worker who'd been in Dubai for 6 years, sending money home to Lahore, working 12-hour days in heat that would kill most people. He was checking the dumpster at Jebel Ali Industrial Zone for anything salvageable. You'd be surprised what construction sites throw away when he found the black plastic bag. Heavy, strange shape, sealed with duct tape. He thought maybe discarded equipment, something he could sell. He opened it. The human torso inside, female, no head or limbs, wearing the tattered remains of a maternity dress, would haunt his nightmares for the rest of his life. Dubai police arrived at 8:15 a.m. Captain Rashid Al-Mansouri, Homicide Division, 38 years old, 15 years in law enforcement. He'd seen his share of bodies, but this was different. The professional dismemberment, the careful disposal, the absence of identifying features. This is professional, he told the forensic team. This is someone who knew exactly what they were doing. This wasn't rage or passion. This was problem solving. The torso went to Dubai Police Forensic Laboratory. DNA samples were taken and entered into the database. Results would take 5 to 7 days. June 22nd, 11:30 a.m. A Bedouin shepherd named Khalil was looking for a lost goat in the desert near Al-Ar when his dog started barking at a partially buried plastic bag. Inside was a human head, female, Filipino features based on facial structure. He called the police immediately. The head joined the torso at the forensic laboratory. Same plastic bag type, same disposal method, same professional execution. June 23rd, 2:20 p.m. A left arm was found in Sharjah landfill. June 24th, sanitation workers in Al-Barsha found a right arm. The pattern was becoming clear. Captain Al-Mansouri assigned Detective Fatima Al-Zabi as primary investigator. She was 32 years old, 8 years in CID, one of the few female homicide detectives in Dubai. Her father had been a pearl diver before oil wealth transformed the Emirates, and she remembered his stories about when Dubai was different, when people mattered more than money. She wasn't easily intimidated by powerful families, which would prove both her greatest strength and her ultimate downfall. June 27, 2022. DNA results came back. Match found in the missing persons database. Ligaya Elena Mendoza, Filipino national, age 33, reported missing by the Philippine consulate on June 17 after her sister Jasmine had called in a panic when Ligaya didn't respond to messages. The identification changed everything. This wasn't a random foreign worker who wouldn't be missed. This was someone whose family was looking for her, whose government had been notified, whose disappearance had created a paper trail. June 28, Detective Al-Zabi executed a search warrant on Seaside Towers apartment 2804. What they found was a roadmap to murder. The note under the mattress detailing Jamil's manipulation. The journal with months of entries chronicling the relationship. Printed photos of Ligaya with a man whose face was visible in several shots, later identified as Jamil Al-Aziz. The gifts he'd given her all traceable. Gabriel's birth certificate naming Jamil as the father. Prescription bottles for prenatal vitamins in Ligaya's name. And most damning, a partial text message recovery from cloud backup Jamil hadn't known about. Come to Marina Pier, birth 47. I have Gabriel. June 29th, Detective Al-Zabi interviewed Jasmine Mendoza via video call. The younger sister was in Cebu City, devastated, angry, desperate for answers. She told them everything Ligaya had shared, the relationship, the pregnancy, the promises, the threats after Gabriel's birth, the timeline of manipulation, the deterioration after the baby was born. She loved him, Jasmine said, crying. She really believed he loved her back, and he killed her for it. The consulate provided records of Ligaya's June 8th visit. Vice Consul Santos's statement corroborated everything: Ligaya's desperation to keep her son, the legal impossibility of her situation, the warning that fighting would end badly. Emirates Wellness Hospital provided birth records. Ligaya registered as Sarah Martinez, identity fraud. Birth certificate showing Jamil Al-Aziz as father. Private suite paid for by Jamil's American Express Black Card. Prenatal care records from Dr. Sarah Mitchell. The doctor was interviewed July 1st at Dubai Police Headquarters. She admitted providing confidential prenatal care to Ligaya, being paid generously to ask no questions. I should have known something was wrong, Dr. Mitchell said, her professional composure cracking. But I told myself it wasn't my business. I was paid too well to make it my business. She revealed she'd provided similar confidential care for 3 other women, connected to wealthy Emirati men in the past 2 years. The pattern was sickening. Marina security footage showed Ligaya arriving at 10:58 p.m. on June 15th. No footage of her leaving. Technical malfunction from 10:45 p.m. to 4 a.m. at berth 47. Footage resumed showing the Desert Star yacht leaving its berth at 5:30 a.m. June 16th. The yacht was registered to Alhambra Maritime Services LLC, a shell company. Beneficial owner traced to Al-Aziz Family Holdings. The yacht had left UAE waters on June 17th, currently in Oman, out of jurisdiction. Every piece of evidence pointed to one of Dubai's most powerful families. July 12, 2022, 10 a.m. Jamil Al-Aziz sat in Dubai Police Headquarters Interview Room 3 with his attorney Omar Al-Thani, senior partner at the Emirates' most expensive law firm. Detective Al-Zabi and Captain Al-Mansouri conducted the interrogation. Jamil was calm, almost bored, answering questions with the confidence of someone who knew he was untouchable. "I'm devastated by Ligaya's death," he said, his voice carrying exactly the right amount of sorrow. "She was a wonderful mother to my son. We had a relationship, yes. Gabriel is my biological child, yes. I was supporting her financially and emotionally. About the text message, I never sent that. My phone was stolen at the charity gala that night. I reported it to security immediately. About the money offer, I offered to support her generously if she chose to return to the Philippines. I thought it would be better for her mental health. She was struggling with postpartum depression, becoming paranoid, making accusations. About the yacht, I've been on that yacht maybe 3 times in my life. I don't even know the berth number off the top of my head." His lawyer shut down every avenue of questioning. "My client has an ironclad alibi. 200 witnesses at the Al Noor Foundation Gala from 8 p.m. until 2:30 a.m. on June 15th. Security footage shows him giving a speech at 9:47 p.m. when that text was allegedly sent. Someone clearly stole his phone and impersonated him. This is a tragic death, but you have zero evidence connecting my client to any crime." The pressure campaign began immediately. July 13th, Captain Al-Mansouri received a call from the Deputy Police Commissioner. "Be very careful with the Al-Aziz family. Make absolutely certain your evidence is bulletproof before making any accusations." July 14th, Detective Al-Zabi's apartment was broken into. Nothing stolen, but her files about the case were clearly examined, photographed. Someone wanted her to know they were watching. July 15th, an anonymous text to her personal phone. "Some cases are better left unsolved. Think about your family." Detective Al-Zabi changed tactics. If she couldn't get Jamil, she'd get the men who actually committed the murder. Omar Al-Balushi, former military special operations, running a security consulting business since 2015. Clients included several wealthy families. Suspected in 2 other disappearances, 2018 and 2020, but never charged. Phone records showed a burner phone active near Marina Walk on June 16th at 3:30 a.m., making a call that lasted 47 seconds. Financial records showed 500,000 dirhams deposited into his account June 18th, $500,000 for a murder. Rahman Khalid, Al-Aziz family driver for 7 years. Phone location data placed him at Marina Walk June 15th evening. Bank records showed 200,000 dirhams cash deposit June 19th. Khalid Youssef, electronics and security specialist. Multiple calls to Marina Security Office June 15th. Payment of 150,000 dirhams received June 20th. The money trail was clear. The question was whether any of them would flip on Jamil. July 20th, 2022, 5 a.m. Simultaneous raids arrested all 3 men at their homes. Charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, desecration of human remains. Rahman Khalid broke after 14 hours of interrogation. "Omar planned everything," he said, exhausted and terrified. "He got orders from someone high up. We were just following instructions." "Who gave Omar the order?" Detective Al-Zabi pressed. "I never heard the name directly, but Omar said it was the father, the baby's father, the rich guy who needed the problem to disappear." July 22nd, Rahman was offered immunity in exchange for testimony. 15 years instead of life if he testified against Omar and the person who gave the order. His testimony was detailed and damning. The text message luring Ligaya to the marina. The interrogation to ensure she had no evidence. Omar's phone call at 3:30 a.m. "She's nobody. She told nobody. Instructions? The response he couldn't hear but Omar's face after cold, determined. The murder, the dismemberment, the disposal locations, the payment structure, the yacht cleaning, everything except the one thing they needed most, Jamil's direct involvement. Omar al-Balushi refused to talk. I want my lawyer. I'm not saying anything. He had the resources to stay silent, and everyone knew who was paying his legal fees. The trial began December 5, 2022. Omar al-Balushi and Khalid Youssef as defendants. Rahman testifying as state witness. The prosecution built their case piece by piece. Ligea's story established through her sister's testimony. Vice Consul Santos explaining the legal impossibility. Dr. Mitchell admitting the pattern of hidden pregnancies. Forensic evidence of the dismemberment. Rahman's detailed account of the murder. The defense tried to discredit Rahman as a confessed murderer trying to reduce his sentence, but the physical evidence supported everything he said. February 14, 2023. Valentine's Day, grimly ironic. The verdict came after 11 hours of deliberation. Omar al-Balushi, guilty of first-degree murder, conspiracy, desecration of remains. Khalid Youssef, guilty of conspiracy, obstruction of justice, accessory after the fact. Sentencing on March 1st. Omar got life imprisonment with no possibility of parole. Khalid got 25 years. Rahman, per his immunity deal, got 15 years. But Jamil al-Aziz's name was never mentioned in the official verdict. Legally protected as unnamed third party. No charges against the person who ordered the killing. No justice for the actual mastermind. March 15, 2023, the Mendoza family filed a civil lawsuit. Wrongful death, intentional infliction of emotional distress, fraud, and a petition for grandparental rights to Gabriel. Their lawyer was Maria Reyes, an international human rights attorney working pro bono because some cases demand justice regardless of payment. The Al-Aziz legal team was 8 lawyers with unlimited budget. The battle lasted 6 months. Depositions, document requests, legal motions. Jamil's deposition on June 8, 2023 was 8 hours of careful admissions and strategic denials. Yes, relationship with Ligea. Yes, Gabriel is his biological son. Yes, offered her money for parental rights. No, never threatened her. No, never wanted her dead. The stolen phone excuse held up legally even though everyone knew it was bullshit. September 1, 2023. Settlement reached. $5 million to the Mendoza family. Jamil retained full custody of Gabriel. Mendoza grandparents granted supervised visitation, 2 weeks per year in Dubai, under conditions that made it clear this was charity, not rights. Gag order preventing the family from speaking publicly. Gabriel would be told his mother died in an accident. The settlement came with lawyer Reyes's brutal advice. We could fight for years and lose everything. At least this gives you some access to your grandson. It's not justice, but it's survival. Roberto Mendoza never met his grandson. The stress of Ligea's murder accelerated his kidney disease. He died November 12, 2024, his last words asking if Gabriel knew his mother had loved him. Elena Mendoza lives alone in the house they bought with settlement money, every room haunted by the daughter who won't return. Jasmine became an advocate for migrant workers' rights, speaking at UN forums, carefully avoiding Ligea's case due to the gag order but fighting for every other woman trapped in similar situations. Gabriel is 3 years old now as of 2025, being raised by nannies in the Al-Aziz compound, seeing Jamil a few times a month, told his mother was a surrogate who returned to the Philippines. He'll inherit millions but will never know his mother died begging to hold him. Jamil married Sheikha Mariam Al-Qasimi in November 2023, expanding his legitimate family. On his 30th birthday, he gained access to $400 million. He was never charged with any crime. The scandal faded within months. Detective Fatima Al-Zabi was transferred to Traffic Division in August 2023, an effective demotion for pursuing powerful families. She resigned in January 2024, now works as a private investigator. I proved who killed Ligea Mendoza, she said off the record to a journalist she trusted. I couldn't prove who ordered it. In Dubai, that's the same as failure. The Philippine consulate documented this as case number 23 in a pattern stretching from 2015 to 2024. 23 Filipino workers involved with wealthy local men, pregnant, trapped. Some took the money and left. Some died under suspicious circumstances. all of them disposable in a system designed to protect wealth and power over human dignity. Ligaya Mendoza was 33 years old when she died. She left behind a mother who will never stop mourning, a father who died of a broken heart, sisters who lost their protector, and a son who will never know her sacrifice. She died because she loved her child more than she feared a powerful man, because she believed motherhood was sacred, because she refused to treat her son as a commodity. This case reveals a truth about the world. Some people are valued, others are disposable. The difference is determined by passport, wealth, and power. Ligaya crossed the world to save her father's life. She fell in love with a man who saw her as a means to an end. She fought to keep her son and paid with her life, dismembered and scattered across the desert like garbage. The man who orchestrated her murder walks free, for $100 million richer, raising the child she died trying to protect. That's not justice, but it's the truth. And the truth is all that survives when money buries everything else.